Anna, thank you. Great show. On the Hill, now they are spending their millions. Donald Trump hammering Kamala Harris on immigration. Harris introducing herself in her very first ad, what they reveal. Also this evening, the new leader of the Secret Service under scrutiny.
I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
then
just like you have.
Somebody
and I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment.
The questions that remain after that fiery testimony, plus RFK Jr. and his boomer town hall. So what's his future? There are 98 days until the November 5th election. Do you know who you're voting for? This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, good evening. I'm Blake Berman. Welcome to Washington, where the war chests are now being put to work. Tonight, Donald Trump's campaign is out with its first ad against Kamala Harris, a 30-second spot in a handful of the key swing states. There is a sole focus: immigration.
This is America's border czar, and she's failed us. Under Harris, over 10 million illegally here. 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Brutal migrant crimes.
Now that is seemingly the theme for the Trump team. For example, in Nevada today, Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, focused on that very issue.
As America's border czar, Kamala Harris unleashed the worst border crisis in American history. 10 million illegal aliens just on her watch have invaded our country.
Now, Vice President Harris countered with her first ad in the swing states as well, a $50 million buy. Now, it was a much softer tone than Trump's ad today, essentially an introduction of her background. Now, she portrays herself as a prosecutor with a winning record. The spot also directed at a reliable voting demographic: seniors.
Donald Trump wants to take our country backward, to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and end the Affordable Care Act. But we are not going back.
But the two spots today from the top two also leave out some of the top issues. For example, Harris does not mention guns. She does not mention abortion. That's a key focus for Democrats. And Trump's ad never once says the word inflation. Never mentions the economy. The economy, as we know, remains the number one worry for voters. Two completely different paths for the top two here in week two. We begin tonight here on the Hill with the Republican Congresswoman from the state of Florida, Laurel Lee. Congresswoman, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time as always. So I was watching the Trump ad today, and I thought to myself, he didn't talk about the economy at all. All it was immigration, immigration, immigration. A mistake to not focus on the economy?
Well, I'm sure that is coming, because the most important thing for us to recognize about Vice President Harris as a now presidential candidate is this: she is absolutely part of the policy agenda of the Biden administration. And the things that voters are interested in, number one, absolutely the border crisis. So I think it is appropriate and will continue to hear a focus about the border crisis, the catastrophe there, and her role in that. But also the economy, absolutely, because those policies, the policies that lead to inflation, are a critical issue for voters as well. And Vice President Harris has been very clear about some of her perspectives, including things like anti-American energy independence and some of the things that are leading to this terrible inflation that we have today. So I feel quite certain that a focus on economic issues is also coming.
Governor Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, Democrat, rumored to potentially be one of those under consideration for the vice president to pick as her running mate, said this last night on a Zoom call. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
How often in the world do you make that wake up afterwards and know that a black woman kicked his and sent him on the road? And you know that's something that guy's going to have to live with for the rest of his life.
That's what he said about the prospect of Donald Trump losing to Kamala Harris. How would you respond to that?
Well, first off, I don't think that tone is helpful. We're at a moment where we need to be talking about the issues. We need to be talking about the things that are appropriate to Americans, not using curse words and speaking about one another in such a way. So here's the bottom line. Donald Trump's supporters are very committed to him. They understand the policies that he implemented when he was in the White House. He didn't just talk about it, he did it. They were successful. Our economy was strong. Our border was secure. And those are the things that are on the minds of voters as they go to vote in November. And I think those are the things that are really going to be compelling to them.
You know, there's a lot of talk right now, Congresswoman, in Washington about Project 2025 and its future, what it looks like, what it might not look like. The Trump team is really trying to distance itself from it today. Democrats have jumped all over it. You're a conservative. This has been a 900-plus page push of policy ideas from conservatives. Did conservatives botch it?
Well, here's the thing. The Trump campaign has been crystal clear that they are not behind Project 2025. They didn't draft it. They don't take any ownership over the contents of the project. I mean, it comes from a think tank. And any of us that are here in Washington know you can't walk a block without running into a think tank that has ideas about
but in your home district of but in your home district of Florida, no one's saying, Congresswoman, what about that think tank Project 2025? It's hitting some independent voters, and that's why the Trump team's trying to run from it.
Well, I haven't heard anything about it from voters in my district. They are talking to me about the issues that affect them in real terms every day. So I don't believe there's anything there. It's a set of ideas put together by an organization that was operating independently of the Trump campaign. So there may be parts of it that are great, that I would support, that they would support, but it certainly is not something that is any sort of wholesale definition of anyone's campaign for re-election. We're focused on the economy, the border, community safety, parents' rights, all of the things Republicans have been talking about throughout this Congress.
Let me leave you with this, because you are on the committee, the bipartisan committee, Democrats, Republicans, looking into the Secret Service failure and the law enforcement failure as it relates to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. There was a hearing today with the interim Secret Service director. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
then
just like
fire
you have.
Somebody to
and
hold them accountable.
I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity.
That, of course, was in the United States Senate. And I wonder if you think your Republican colleague, Senator Hawley, is on to something. Should folks be fired right now, or do you want your committee to go through things and look at it and then have some action as a result?
Well, I think it is absolutely necessary that folks are held accountable, that we find who is responsible for the decisions that were made that day and the security failures that were made that day, and they are held accountable. So our special task force, one thing that I think is very important about it is who sits on it. We have members who are law enforcement officers, former military officers, former prosecutors. We have people who have the experience to understand a crime scene, understand an investigation, get to a conclusion, and develop the transparency that Congress and the American people need. Because this is the most important thing, is that Vice President Harris and President Trump are still out there right now, today, out in their communities, conducting rallies under Secret Service protection. So we've got to figure out how there could be such a critical failure so that we can ensure that they and the others are being kept safe.
All right, Congresswoman Laurel Lee, Republican from Florida, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Always great to see you.
Yep, you got it. All right, joining me today throughout the hour here on the Hill, Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor, former chairman of the D.C. Democratic Party, Ashley Davis, former official in the George W. Bush White House, Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist, Mick Mulvaney, of course, the former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. So the money, all the story about the money's come in, we're fundraising. Today, the money started going out. And you started to define on both sides these candidates. Mick, Donald Trump put out that ad. It was about 5 things: immigration, and then immigration. Why not the economy?
Oh, they'll get to that. My guess is they got some internal data that says that they can pound Kamala Harris on the immigration issue. She was the border czar. We have difficulties at the border, et cetera. I didn't care for the ad much. I much prefer ads that use people's own words. And there's a lot of stuff out there with Kamala Harris talking about the border where she doesn't look very good. And my guess is you'll see that at some point. I didn't care for Kamala Harris's ad either. It's a little bit biographical, but I don't think it moves the needle. You have to do it, right? You have to do it first to introduce yourself to the voting public.
So they are two totally different people, right? Whether you love or hate Donald Trump, he's a known quantity.
Correct.
Kamala Harris isn't exactly there yet.
Right, and money is never going to be an issue in this race. So, I mean, it's great news that all this money's been raised over the last, 2 weeks. But we all know. I always say that we could, solve world hunger
if we didn't
put
do
our
stuff.
money. Yes, but
slow out the gate though is. With the way Trump's approaching this, or you think?
No, I think he hit on this one issue. Let's not confuse anything. He's going to hit on her and the economy.
He doesn't have to reintroduce himself. He's baked in. And Kamala Harris has to reintroduce herself because she's been number 2. And so they've got plenty of money to spend. You can only put so much in a 30-second to 60-second ad.
What about it, though? Because she was initially right out the gate, abortion, guns, freedom, we have freedoms. That was a different message from her today. Where's she going?
I think it's about just defining yourself before the other side gets to define you. Again, we've been operating for, as you said in the lead, 2 years we've been running this campaign, but now...
It's 2 weeks.
Now
this is
it's 2
actually
weeks
week 2.
with the actual... 2 candidates, it's not Biden. So, yeah, spending $50 million in targeted states to define yourself first, make that first impression. I think part of the Trump ad has a lot more to do, though, with J.D. Vance's struggles. This gets him back on script. This gets him able to go and play to his strengths at these rallies. He's speaking twice a day in Nevada, hitting the immigration issue and moving away from all the cat lady thing.
But, Biden was the president, and it's Biden's border, and it's Harris's border. But do people who receive this information in the ads, are they going to link her to the border crisis? That is, they know she was part of the team.
Smirked at you.
I understand. They know she's part of the team, just like the Congresswoman said.
She's not.
But she wasn't the leading of the team. And the only issue I'm raising is whether that may work with MAGA and the GOP, but Trump has to grow. And is an ad like that going to let him grow to get conservative Democrats independence? And I don't think so, because she's a fresh new voice, lots of energy. That's baked in. She's reintroducing herself, and there's a lot of energy behind her candidacy.
We're just taking the immigration issue, which is what we're talking about with this ad. She was the head of the border.
She had a policy position looking at the root causes.
So this is what Democrats like to say. No, it was root causes. Republicans like to slap the borders are. Either way, it was sort of the big thing that whole issue.
But Americans blame Biden. They don't
If you're
blame
voting
Harris.
on the border, you're already voting for Republicans.
Say that again?
If you're voting on the border, you're already voting for Republicans in this election.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think he's probably right, but Kurt said something interesting about this definition issue. Keep in mind, I think they're talking now about confirming Kamala as the nominee before the convention.
Yeah.
Okay? That got a lot, oh my goodness, that's nefarious. No, it's not. It goes to the definition issue. Keep in mind what happened to Mitt Romney back in 2012, I think it was, right? That he didn't have the money from the RNC until he was the nominee.
That's right.
Okay, so what you're going to see now is they're going to name Kamala Harris as the nominee earlier than they otherwise would, so that she get access to the money and he can't define her early.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Yeah.
Is that and I haven't been able to say this on this show yet, is I think what's happening with Kamala right now is it's a movement. I've watched younger voters. I've watched women. I've watched people that were on the fence about Donald Trump. And she has created a movement, or they have created a movement around her, which was different than 2 weeks ago.
By the way, real quick, and then I got to...
He's got to grow to win. He cannot stay around and hang around at 47%, 48%. And there's a movement on the other side, and all they have to do is keep their put their foot on the pedal, and that movement just drives them to winning. So they've got to stop that in some way.
I would just note, in these very first 2 ads right out the gate, Donald Trump did not talk about anything in the Trump administration. He talked about Kamala Harris throughout. And in Kamala Harris's ad, she only talked about one thing in the Biden-Harris administration, and it was capping insulin prices at $35. So both of them aimed at seniors. That ad was about seniors. All right, still to come here on the Hill over the next 46 minutes or so. No tax on tips in Nevada, and Megan Thee Stallion campaigning in Atlanta. 2 very different approaches for both campaigns. But first, on the other side of the break, late night TV taking shots at one person on this panel. What the comedian Martin Short said about someone here in this room, and the response when the Hill on NewsNation returns. on NewsNation. Developing tonight, Israel striking Beirut, Lebanon, targeting the top commander for Hezbollah, who Israel is blaming for the deadly rocket attack on a soccer field in northern Israel over the weekend. The attack killed 11 children, teenagers, 12 actually. Vice President Harris moments ago was asked about Israel's response. Watch.
Israel has a right to defend itself, and I unequivocally support Israel's right to remain secure, and we still must work on a diplomatic solution to end these attacks, and we will continue to do that work.
All right, Kurt, so now she's going to be asked about questions like that. Something happens in Israel. Something happens in Ukraine. Something happens in pick your spot around the world. Madam Vice President, thoughts? And I wonder what that tells you. I mean, it's just a very small sample size. But what does that tell you about a possible Commander-in-Chief Harris?
Well, if you listen to it, it's very similar, almost identical to the comments she made last week when we took on this very show her remarks after a meeting with Netanyahu. And she just reiterated that there's that consistency. I think she is very mindful now, as the nominee, as the leader, as a potential commander-in-chief. Consistency is key when you're talking about foreign policy. You cannot deviate from what you just said a week ago, and you know that's what I saw from that little clip.
This isn't going to help her with her left, though. That comment right there and that.
I think the left is giving her a honeymoon on this stuff right now. I think the left, especially the younger voters like those in Michigan, I think that they are looking at Kamala Harris going, we are going to get a better shake with her than we would have with Biden, so we're going to let some of this go right now.
And I don't think they care about this counter bombing in Lebanon over Hezbollah. I think they care about the death and destruction in Gaza, and they're more pro-Palestinian than they could ever be pro-Hamas.
To Ashley's point about how she handles this and how much leeway the base is going to give her, and the honeymoon. How long does that honeymoon?
And is the 100 days a short honeymoon? I mean, or is it long enough honeymoon?
If they get a deal on the Israeli-Hamas war, this becomes a non-issue in the campaign.
Yeah.
The sooner they can get that deal done, the better.
Yeah. And that's like every time Donald Trump opens his mouth and says things like Kamala Harris hates Jewish people, that extends the honeymoon, though, because of ridiculous comments like he made today.
Mulvaney's been sitting back, and here's why, because let's get to this. Elsewhere, the word Nazi.
He never sits back.
Continues to be a part of the public dialogue when it comes to politics. Now, last night on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the guest host, Martin Short, took a moment from our show with me and Mick and said this about a conversation last month that we were having about Melania Trump. Watch.
Some may find it odd that we could have a president in a long-distance relationship. Trump's former chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, thinks it makes perfect sense.
The former First Lady not playing a big role possibly in her husband's presidential campaign. Axios now reporting that she might not return full-time to D.C.
Look, this is the issue. When you are rich and famous and beautiful like Mrs. Trump was before she was First Lady, being First Lady can be a real step down. You lose the ability to go out. You lose the ability to have friends over. It can be a very confining sort of role.
Thank you. The guy who looks like the melted-faced Nazi from Indiana Jones.
Wow. Okay, so I'm sitting there last night watching this, and I'm saying to myself, he just said that Mick Mulvaney, a former congressman, former chief of staff, politician, and dropped the word Nazi. Said you looked like a Nazi character.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, that doesn't fly.
I'll give you two different answers.
Okay.
Because they told me I had to be serious about this, and it deserves a little bit of a serious answer. Look, how many times we talked about it in the show? It doesn't help, right? I thought we had. I think that's actually a replay of a previous.
So this was the second time it's done.
So they played it again. You would think that after the assassination attempt and President Biden going on TV saying let's turn down the rhetoric some, that they wouldn't do this and play this particular clip, and it certainly doesn't help. That said, I do look like the Nazi in Indiana Jones.
You've been told that you look like him before.
Well, my kids tell me that. With the guy whose face melts off at the end of it. Yeah, there's actually a lot of pictures of me.
But I'm watching that, though, and it sounded like the joke was set up to say you look... Donald Trump's former chief of staff looks like a Nazi character.
I just like the fact that the staff of the Late Night Show is watching.
They're watching it.
Thank you very much. You guys are always welcome to make fun of us.
Could you imagine, though, if that was the other way around?
Yeah, but you've written about this, right? Like, we got to cut this out, right? Like using the word, connecting just Nazi and everything to
and it
politics.
Wasn't that funny of a piece. I don't know why people laugh at that particular line.
I was about to say, I didn't get the joke. I didn't get the connection between the movie and you looking like the Nazi and your commentary on her being rich and beautiful and being first lady could be a step down because it's confining. There was a disconnect there for me.
It's a gratuitous attack. And again, it's a little bit different than the stuff they're used to go after J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, but it's all part and parcel of the larger escalation of the rhetoric in this country. It's just not healthy.
What would you say real quick to those? They say, it's comedy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not the worst thing they said about me on late
You've
television. Oh, yeah, I've seen there's been some
stuff come your way.
Photographs of me. Listen, I liked it when comedy was not political. I liked it when sports were not political. I liked it when we could turn to comedy and to athletics and other things in life and not have politics infect everything. It's really hard to watch late-night television in this country now because it's all political.
In sports, we're seeing it in the Olympics, and it's awful there, too. All right. Meantime, still much more ahead here on the Hill. It is the new issue that we are seeing in polling, housing. But can you afford it? What we learned today about how much it costs to afford part of the American dream and what went wrong on the day that Trump was shot.
Unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly, sir. We have to be able to have a proper investigation into this.
Lawmakers press the new Secret Service leader for answers, the heated questions, and the new details when the Hill returns.
To the roof of the AGR building where the assailant fired shots, and I laid in a prone position to evaluate his line of sight. What I saw made me ashamed. I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured.
Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. That right there, the acting Secret Service Director, Ronald Rowe. He was in front of a joint Senate panel today here on Capitol Hill, speaking about and taking questions about the failed assassination attempt of the former president, Donald Trump. Now, Rowe took the reins after the former director, Kimberly Cheadle, resigned. There were tense moments, but senators say they appreciated, in part, Rowe's candor. Now, we are learning today, for example, that the Secret Service only knew of a suspicious person being investigated, and that the Secret Service's drone was delayed because of signal issues. The acting director said the drone could have prevented the shooting, and we now know local police did not report a person on the roof to Secret Service. Now, Rowe says he has questions of his own, including how local police did not see the shooter.
This point of view is the point of view where the counter-sniper team locally was posted. The gold arrow indicates where the shooter fired from. Looking left. Why was the assailant not seen?
Joining us now here on the Hill, a member of the bipartisan House task force that is investigating how Donald Trump was almost killed. Congressman Lou Correa, you can see, Congressman, I think you're back with us, doing TV in 2024. The Zoom shot is up. Thank you, Congressman. Thanks for being with us. We're going in and out of shots here, but tell me what you hope to learn and sort of what the big questions you have are right now, because you're one of the folks on this committee who's going to try to get some answers.
13 committee members, and what I'm hoping to do is find out what the problems are and fix them. Remember, we're in campaign season. Less than 100 days for presidential election. We've got both candidates, former President Trump, Vice President Kamala Harris, out there campaigning at events like this. I want to know what went wrong, who's in charge, and move forward. The blame game, we'll talk about that for months, but right now, we've got to fix what happened. My primary question right now, ladies and gentlemen, is who's in charge? Is it the Secret Service? Is it the campaign? Is it the local sheriffs, local police, or the Secret Service? We want to drill down, come up with solutions, because that's what our constituents want. They want our candidates to be safe and to be out there campaigning without fearing for their life.
Yeah, and you talk about, we are in campaign season, right? And think about it. They got to protect President Biden, Kamala Harris, whoever she names here in the upcoming days as her vice presidential pick. Senator J.D. Vance, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is getting protection as well, and their families. I might even be missing something as I rattle it off on the top of my head. And I wonder, Congressman, how you actually think that this could rise above partisanship, considering we are in the home stretch. I know it has to, but how can it? How will it?
It has to. I spoke to the chair of this new committee, Mike Kelly, and both he and I agree this is about America, keeping our democracy strong, earning again the trust of our people, the voters of this country. I can't imagine how a lone wolf, it appears it was just this individual, 20-year-old, who gets so close to assassinating former President Trump. This is unacceptable. And I can tell you, from my trip, on my visit to Butler County, what I saw there was more than scary. Incompetence, so many lapses. Bottom line, we have to fix this, and we have to fix this system right now.
Let me ask you about politics for a second, Congressman. You are, of course, a Democrat from the state of California, a border state. We're looking at Kamala Harris, who is now at the top of the ticket for your party, and she released her first ad today. It was essentially an introduction of herself to the country as she now tries to figure out her way forward and her way potentially to the Oval Office. And this is how Donald Trump responded with his own ad, his first one since she became at the top of the ticket. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Do you have any plans to visit the border? You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Kamala Harris failed, weak, dangerously liberal.
How's she going to respond to that? How would you respond to that, Congressman? Because you know what they're trying to do, Republicans are trying to do. They're going to say, look, she was the border czar. Look at the encounter numbers during the Biden administration. That's got to be reversed.
Two things. Number one, this is a political ad. I'm concerned about the safety of our presidential candidates. That and foremost is what this committee of 13 has to do. Remember, our democracy is very frail. Our frenemies around the world hope to see us fighting each other. So as we focus on the campaign, on the messaging, the bigger picture is let's make sure our democracy works. Let's make sure that American voters have the opportunity and the right is preserved to vote. That's what's important right now. The border, other issues, those are good for the voters to decide on. Today, Lou and 12 other members of Congress are going to make sure that these candidates in front of you are safe and that they can deliver their message to the voters. And by the way, the other thing I think we need to do is we got to tone it down. This country is deeply divided. There's conspiracy theories everywhere. You got to remember, we're all Americans. The 13 of us on this committee want to do what's best for America. Let's focus on that.
Congressman Lou Correa, Democrat from the state of California. Appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us via Zoom here on the Hill. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you much.
You got it. All right. So you heard him, and he's right? Like, we all should be responsible adults right now. But let's turn to the politics of all this. You just saw the ad that dropped from Donald Trump. I just asked a border state Democrat how to deal with it, and I didn't really hear an answer.
You know, as we were sitting here, the Harris campaign just put out actually a new video, which is their response to the border ad. And basically it hits Donald Trump for, as they put it, blocking increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. So that's their response.
So they're gonna say, well, the Senate deal that Donald Trump killed.
But no one's going to believe that. I mean, I get it, and that's what they had to do, but no one's going to believe that because everyone's going to compare how the life was under him and how the life is now in regards to
but he still killed the border deal. You can't run from that.
He didn't. The border deal was never going to pass the House, so everyone can say that the Senate
deal are you talking about? The one that the
Senate one?
The one that didn't
have the Ray Langford
kibosh on it.
I know, but it was never going to pass the House.
The reality, though, is Donald Trump never wanted that to happen.
Of course.
In a presidential year and in a presidential race. And the other reality is the numbers skyrocketed during the Biden administration. Those are the two realities.
I've got a different take on what you just did, by the way. I really like that interview. I don't know Lou. I didn't serve with Lou. I really liked that interview. It's really nice.
Him or me?
No, well,
I'm joking.
You're always fabulous. You're always fabulous. But look, what was that? That was a Democrat in a highly divided town saying, look, we really just want to get to the bottom of this. The fact that somebody got a shot at a former president of the United States is really, really bad. Let's figure out what happened. That's encouraging. That's positive. At least we can agree on something. Listen, I'm one of the people who worries, are we so divided in this country now that if you have the next 9/11 that we won't be able to respond to it like we did in 2001? Yeah. Are we that divided to our core? And seeing interview somebody like Congressman Correa, that leads me to believe that there's still people in that building who just want to do a good job.
Are there enough of them, though, because you got 535 of them between the House and the Senate?
Let's celebrate the one guy who's willing to come on TV and do that and see what the committee does. Look, I thought the answer that the Secret Service guy gave today was fine, which is we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're not going to rush to judgment. We're going to do it right. It'd be nice to see Washington do some things right for a change.
The only thing I'll say, though, I don't like when they blame local law enforcement because it's the Secret Service that is responsible for protecting our candidate.
And that might be where they come up at the end. It might not be. You don't know.
Well, that's...
But Blake, if these numbers at the border continue to go down over the next 100 days and stuff, this is good. This issue against the Democrats that the GOP has taken is going to become less prominent and less important because the old stuff is baked in.
All right, still to come here from the Hill on NewsNation. J.D. Vance in Nevada today as Donald Trump touts the idea of no tax on tips. Why one group is saying it doesn't add up. And where does RFK Jr. go from here? Think about it. You've heard the panel here. You've got Democrats coalescing around Harris. You've got Republicans coalescing around Trump. What about him? He's now running in the low single digits. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation.
Over 1 million Americans tuned into NewsNation's special on the plot to kill Trump. Now, all this week, Brian Minton guest host Banfield, going deep into the investigation. When were officers aware of the gunman? Plus what we know about the victims, the shooter, and more. Banfield, 10/9 Central.
In Atlanta, Georgia, live look at Megan Thee Stallion performing there. Vice President Harris expected to speak any moment now. Left side of the screen, Reno, Nevada, J.D. Vance out on the How about that split screen?
Dichotomy.
So you've probably seen stories in the recent days about who thinks who was weird, right? Who's winning the meme battle? Donald Trump distancing himself from Project 2025. I mean, look at this split screen. But what really matters to voters right now, in 4 of the 5 swing states, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, the economy tops the list. And the new data out today shows Americans are worried. We just learned that it is getting harder to buy a home. The closely watched Case-Shiller report shows housing prices hit a new high in May, up nearly 6% in the largest cities across this country. The government also reported today the number of job openings decreased in June, meaning if you're looking for a job, it could be harder to get one. And a new consumer confidence measurement shows while Americans' feelings on the economy trended up, it's still lower than where we were before the pandemic. And Americans say they think they'll feel better in 6 months. That, by the way, lines up when we have a new president. A lot on the line for voters this election, and it all hangs on kitchen table issues like these. If she's going to run, Kamala Harris, on the Biden record, how does she run on that when Americans are getting that and feeling that?
Well, I think that one of the things you said I think is really key here, that Americans feel like they will feel better in 6 months. And I think that turning the page, a fresh start, there's something psychologically to that for the country. And I think the vice president better embodies what that turning the page looks like than Donald Trump, who, again, remember, most people in this country, they did not want this match.
But he's going to talk about inflation, right? I gave you inflation at 1.5% and it hit 9%.
The one blind spot of the Republican attack of the Biden-Harris agenda is so unpopular. The retort to that is, that's interesting you say that because there are a whole lot of Republican members of Congress taking credit in their districts for an agenda they voted against.
Infrastructure plan, for sure. And what was he going to do with the economy that he inherited, the COVID economy, for example? What was he going to do? He had to pump money into the economy with the risk that we knew inflation was coming. Now, they denied that early on. They said, well, it was just going to be minimal and what have you.
They denied it.
No. I'm talking about the Democrats.
Transitory was the word you
used. You didn't need, like,
but you had to pump money in this economy. That saved the economy, and now we're paying for it later.
It's a question about whether they pumped too much. And
correct.
Fair enough.
You didn't need the final package.
Fair enough.
I'll give you the last word here.
No, I'm just glad that you had to answer that question, not me, because that was a tough one. I mean,
which one?
I thought my answer was pretty good, though.
Which one?
No, just that the economy is still going to be around her neck.
Right. And
but we got Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah, you got Megan Thee Stallion.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking,
there it is.
Who is going to sing on stage for us?
For
Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan. I don't know.
For Republicans.
All right. Meantime, during his next stop in Reno, Nevada, J.D. Vance is expected to tout former President Trump's no tax on tips proposal. But the Tax Foundation, one of the world's leading nonpartisan tax policy nonprofits, is arguing the idea doesn't add up. For example, they say it leaves low and middle income earners out of the loop, steers employees and businesses to a tip-based approach, opens the door to potential abuse, and becomes difficult to estimate the cost of no tax on tips. Former budget director, does this make sense?
Don't ask me that question as a former budget director. Ask me that question as a former member of Congress.
Does it make sense?
This is why. These are two different answers. Okay, I'm going to give you the answer that really counts. The budget director, they're absolutely right. Okay, as a member of Congress, this is why people from the Tax Foundation don't get elected to office. This is the reason that people at think tanks run around this town and have really good answers but can't get elected. Nobody cares about that. By the way, it also impacts Medicare's viability because if you move stuff off tips, it's no longer payroll tax. You don't contribute to Medicare or Social Security. Nobody cares. This is a really good political idea, and it's no shock to me that they're pitching it in Nevada, where a lot of the folks in Las Vegas work for tips.
3%, real quick, 2.5%, 3%. Here are the numbers of the U.S. workforce are tipped occupations, right? None of us here get tips. 3% of the workforce, give or take, does. But in Nevada, look at those numbers. 23% of Nevada's leisure and hospitality workforce receives tips. 26% of the greater Las Vegas area. So that's why he's doing this.
Yes.
Is it good policy or is it pandering?
That it's neither of those two things. It's populism.
Okay.
This is a popular thing. It doesn't really impact that many people nationwide. Trump has had a couple other ideas like this that sound great, that sort of target small groups. He's targeting the folks who vote in Las Vegas, and they are going to love it. And no one else is going to vote against Donald Trump because of it.
I'll get you in here on RFK Jr., Scott. What about him? His campaign announcing he has gained ballot access in 3 more states, Alaska, Indiana, Nebraska. That puts him officially on the ballot in 10 states at this point in time. All right, so here's why I wanted to talk about RFK Jr. You got Democrats rallying around Kamala Harris. Heck, you even had Ashley say this show she thinks it's a movement.
Quote.
You got
Ashley.
No,
Republicans
it is a
coalescing around.
That's a fact, not an opinion.
You have Republicans coalescing around Donald Trump. RFK's running at 5%. Where does he go?
He goes nowhere because he's the big loser in the Biden sweepstakes.
Is he, or is he going to give his endorsement somewhere and try to parlay?
Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. He's irrelevant. He's been irrelevant, and he wasn't going to go anywhere. And I don't know why he's still in the race. But there's no room for him in this race now with the rise of Kamala Harris. Period.
Where does he go? What happens?
I think he stays in. I actually thought he was going to go with Trump after. Because he's making a point. What else does he have to do?
He's at 5%. He's never going to win.
I thought he was going to go with Trump after the convention and the shooting and everything else. I don't think he does now.
Where does he go?
He's headed to the ocean of obscurity where he belongs.
Okay, Kurt.
Bye-bye.
Disagree, okay? By the way, yeah, because listen, remember, we talked about this in the show 30 days ago, and he said, I'm going to be on the ballot in all 50 states.
Yeah.
And we said, no, he wasn't.
Not happening.
And it doesn't make any difference because he's not going to win, to Scott's point. But he's on the ballot in Michigan, I think he's on the ballot in Arizona, and I think he might be on the ballot in Nevada. If not, he's trying to get there. He could make a difference in those states where 1 or 2 percentage points can change the outcome of the whole election.
So why does he want to make a difference?
Why do crazy people do what crazy people do? I mean, listen, we're talking about Robert F. Kennedy, right? Why does Jill Stein run every single year?
That may have been right with Biden in the race. That's not right with
I don't
Harris
think he
and her.
believes in any of
There's
Harris's
no room
policies.
in there.
Why do you think
he
he
is
went-
not going to impact Michigan?
Why do you think he went to the convention to do all that, meet with Trump, and then the video thing comes out, which I think hurt him with the Trump? Like, no one likes to have that happen.
You're asking sane questions about something that might not be sane.
Okay.
People like being famous, and maybe he just likes us talking about it.
All right, speaking of fame, it's the Olympics. A major upset for the U.S. Olympic flag bearer Coco Gauff, the reigning U.S. Open champ, lost her third-round match after arguing a controversial call with the ump. She left in tears, a disappointing finish, as you might imagine, for the tennis star. Meanwhile, the U.S. women's rugby team shocking the world, beating Australia in the last seconds with a 90-yard run to win the bronze medal. It is the first women's rugby medal for this country in U.S. Olympics history. Great stuff. And just hours ago, Simone Biles led the U.S. women's gymnastics team to the gold. This is her 8th medal, making Biles the most decorated American gymnast in the history of the Olympic Games.
Just I got to ask, because we're friends, so I can ask you these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Did you give a spoiler alert before you gave the results of the Olympics?
It's going to be on prime time tonight.
Hear your phone
It's going to be on the prime time tonight.
Yeah, but you know what you should be watching in prime time? NewsNation. That's why
boom. That's why.
Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, on the other side of the break. Stay with us. You're watching The Hill.
Don't watch the Olympics. Watch Chris Cuomo.
Have you chosen your VP yet? Have you chosen yet?
Not yet, she says. Welcome back here to The Hill. That, of course, the vice president earlier today when asked if she has picked her running mate. NewsNation has learned that she has begun interviewing some of the contenders. The final pick here is expected in the upcoming days. Meantime, live look at Atlanta, Georgia. We are expecting Vice President Harris to take the stage at any moment. Live look out west, Reno, Nevada, where J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate, will hold a rally as well. 2 crucial states, Georgia, Nevada. That just some of the split screen, Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, that not only are we going to see this evening in your hour, but really what we expect here in the upcoming 98 days. What are you looking forward to this hour?
I'm just sort of stunned that Kamala Harris had her first unscripted moment with a gaggle. 2 words.
1 question, 2 words.
As she was walking on the stairs.
Look, she deserves to be asked questions. And she deserves to give answers, right? And she hasn't really gone there yet, but that moment's coming for her.
Well, is it though? And I think that's the real question, right? I mean, we've watched now 6 or so of these events of Kamala Harris. We're going to have some statistics coming up on exactly how long she talks for. It's almost exactly the same length.